In the state of Meghalaya, there is a critical emergency service, a lifeline, really, that's been tangled up in administrative red tape for over 4 years. So today, we're going to untangle this story and see how a so-called temporary problem has left thousands of people hanging in the balance. Now, take a look at this quote. You might think this is from a critic, right? Or maybe an activist? Nope. This is a direct admission from Meghalaya's own health minister. It's a pretty shocking confession from the very top, and it really lays bare the very real human stakes of this whole crisis. And those stakes are incredibly high. We're talking about an ambulance fleet that's getting old and just isn't reliable. The paramedics and drivers, the people on the front lines, are being denied basic rights like insurance and leave. All of this, of course, puts patient care at risk. And because nobody has any long-term accountability, the entire system is failing the very people it's supposed to save. So the big question is, how did we get here? Let's break down the official story behind this temporary situation that just never seems to end. This is where things get really interesting. It all kind of starts with the government's own word for its most critical emergency service, Limbo. Just think about that word for a second. It means there's no permanent operator, no real plan for the future, and no clear way forward. So the stopgap measure, the quick fix, was to have the National Health Mission, or NHM, take over and manage the service. Temporarily. But as we're about to see, the definition of temporary has been stretched way, way beyond its breaking point. How temporary are we talking? Over 1,700 days. That's more than 4.5 years. This one number really tells you everything you need to know about how long this temporary arrangement has been going on. It's not a delay anymore. It's become the new normal. Let's just walk through this timeline of failure, shall we? The private contract expires way back in March 2021. The NHM steps in for its temporary takeover. You fast forward 3 full years to April 2024, and the minister finally admits, yeah, we're in limbo. And then, in December of that year, what do? They issue a fresh tender, basically hitting the reset button on a process that had already been failing for years. So here's the crucial question. Why? Why has this taken over 4 years? This is where we need to dig in and really investigate the anatomy of this failure to understand the reasons behind this unbelievable delay. So the official explanation is, to put it mildly, a bit vague. Complications. It's a classic bureaucratic excuse that doesn't really explain anything. I mean, what kind of complications take over 1,700 days to solve? It just doesn't add up. So if you look closer, there are really 3 main theories. First, maybe the bidding conditions were just totally unrealistic. If that's the case, why not just change them? Second, you have to wonder about political interference. Maybe the process is being stalled to help out a certain company. Or third, and this is always a possibility, it could just be good old-fashioned bureaucratic incompetence. I mean, 4 years is a long, long time for a committee to fail at its one job. And all of this leads us to a fascinating concept that might just explain everything: governance as theater. This is how we see a temporary problem being allowed to fester until it becomes a permanent crisis, almost by design. So what exactly is governance theater? Well, it's basically when a government uses a super complicated, long, drawn-out process to look like it's taking action. But in reality, it's a clever way to avoid making any tough decisions and, most importantly, to avoid being held accountable for anything. And when you look at it through that lens, the gap between the official story and the reality is just huge. The state calls it a temporary arrangement, but for the workers and patients, it's a permanent crisis. They say they're following due process, but it really just looks like organized irresponsibility. The stated goal is finding a new bidder, but the actual result is that nobody has to take any responsibility. And what this does is create a really vicious cycle. That temporary label becomes the perfect excuse for doing nothing. Workers' rights are ignored because, hey, it's not permanent. Service quality goes down because who's going to invest in new ambulances for a temporary system? And the best part for everyone in charge, no one is accountable. The government is working on it, and the NHM are just temporary managers. It's a perfect system for passing the buck. Okay, so this all brings us to one final, really critical question. It's a question that cuts through 4 years of excuses and forces us to think about a real solution. Seriously, think about it for a second. If the National Health Mission has been able to run the service, even in this temporary way, for over 4 years, it proves the state can do it. So why is everyone so focused on this endless, failed search for a private company? This really challenges the entire foundation of the crisis, and it forces you to ask, what has the real objective been all along?